Oromo Voice Radio English program. Oromo Voice Radio is broadcasting to Oromia at 16-meter band or 17,850 kilohertz or on oromovoice.org website. OVR broadcasts Oromia Insight program every Monday for 15 minutes at 7:15 p.m. Oromia local time. Welcome to Oromia Insight program.
Welcome to Oromia Insight. My name is Aliji Galeto. Today I'll present to you African News, the Morning Call Report, tougher rules for Ethiopian state of emergency, a state of emergency in Ethiopia, CTV interview with Professor Abbas Ganmo, University of Toronto, Member of Parliament Canada must stand with people of Ethiopia in Parliament of Canada, Anthony Benn, MEP, Australian Labour Party on ongoing oppression of the Oromo people. First, African News, the Morning Call Report, tougher rules for Ethiopia state of emergency.
Well, welcome to this edition of the Morning Call. The rules for Ethiopia's state of emergency are becoming more draconian as more than 1,000 people, mostly Oromos, were arrested in the region of Sebeta near the capital Addis Ababa. Now, Ethiopia issued rules to be followed during the state of emergency declared on the 9th last week. Now, emergency declared on the 9th last week, including making and posting on social media the political situation in the country, a crime. Now, most of the regulations imposed have been widely seen as having direct violation on human rights to freedom of expression, which included diplomats having to ask for permission to travel more than 40 kilometers from the city.
Among the controversial measures are the introduction of red zones along the borders and around major roads in which movements have been strictly controlled, and foreign diplomats in the country have also been restricted to travel more than 40 kilometers outside the capital Addis Ababa without official permission. Moreover, a curfew has been introduced from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. on access to economic installations, infrastructure and agricultural development projects, factories and others.
Now, Befeqadu Hailu is joining us right now on the Morning Call. He is a blogger and a political writer in Ethiopia. Good morning, Befeqadu. The Ethiopian government has announced extra measures with regard to this state of emergency. How are Ethiopians reacting to them?
It has been only a week since the state of emergency has been declared. The capital actually didn't witness any protests, so it seems like usual, but during the evening you see everyone gets home earlier than before, like at 9 p.m. This is not a common thing that used to happen before the declaration of the state of emergency. So I think people are scared and do not exactly know what they have to do to be exempt of whatever is happening after the declaration of the state of emergency. That's what I see regarding the reaction of especially the Addis Ababa people.
Now, Hailu, Article 3 of these extra measures says, and I quote, "In order to maintain the peace of citizens, any assembly or protest without authorization from command post is prohibited," end quote. This certainly targets the OromoProtests. Have there been any more protests since?
All means of communication are almost blocked, so we don't hear reports of protesters, but I know even after the declaration of the state of emergency, there were some, very limited though, there were some protesters in the region of Oromia and even Amhara too. Well, according to the declaration, before demonstrating or gathering, people need to have authorization from the command post. For me, it's like the command post will never give you authorization to any protesters, because it never happened in our political culture, even before the declaration of this state of emergency. So local administrations are not willing to give authorizations to any kinds of public demonstration, critiques to government administrations.
Now, lastly, the curfew hours have been revised down to 6 a.m., 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. How will this affect the lives of ordinary Ethiopians who just want to go about their ordinary life?
what I have seen from the state of emergency details, it lacks clarity and specificity. So it's always unclear and vague, so people are scared which ones are not allowed and which are allowed. So it's kind of confusing and it keeps you frightened very much. From 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., any citizen is not allowed to move around government institutions and public infrastructures. And it's not clear which ones are public infrastructures and which are not, because, even roads are by themselves public infrastructures. Other political activists, for example, I can mention former Blue Party members, Yasper Tesfaye and Blaine Muslim. They were arrested from their homes. In Yasper's case, he was just leaving from office when he was detained. He was not taken to court for almost the past 6 days. It happened after the declaration of the state of emergency, so we suspected that it has something to do with the state of emergency, but they didn't take him to the court. In case of Blaine Muslim, they took her to court, and the police explaining that she has tried to instigate violence. So it's really confusing which ones are prohibited and which ones are not prohibited, and which mistakes can get you to jail.
Thank you very much, Befeqadu, for joining us on the morning call.
Now, CTV interview with Professor Abbas Ganamo about a state of emergency in Ethiopia.
The African nation Ethiopia is experiencing what some describe as the downside of authoritarian development. Ethiopia has until recently been popular with development economists and international investors such as the Chinese government. But Ethiopia has in recent months been sliding toward chaos, with the arrests of 1,500 people in just the past 2 weeks following the Ethiopian government's declaration of state of emergency. Professor Abbas Namo specializes in Ethiopian politics at the University of Toronto, and he joins us this morning from Toronto. Professor Namo, thanks for taking time to speak with us. Can we note that Ethiopia's ruling government for the past 25 years began as a rebel movement? How well, generally in your view, up till now, has it governed Ethiopia?
Thank you for inviting me. As you know, this government came to power in 1991 by force. It promised many changes, federalism, democratization, and economic development. This has not been delivered, and so this is a massive frustration by the major group called the Oromo, who have been historically marginalized, who are in protest against the Ethiopian state.
So this is a gradual building over the past 25 years. Why now have these protests broken out?
Absolutely, and one of the triggers was simply land grabs, which took place in Addis Ababa. It's called the Addis Ababa Master Plan, which means to marginalize and take away the land of hundreds of thousands of people. The students protested massively. The government used heavy-handed because the plan was naturally discarded, but still the protest continued. And so the frustration is simply related to massive corruption, lack of political freedoms, the government controlling almost practically 100% parliament, the armed forces, political economy. Practically the government seems to be like a dictatorial regime, and so many people are frustrated. The frustration, of course, started with the Oromo people, who constitute 40%. And then now it's reaching the Amhara region as well.
In spite of that, Ethiopia was Africa's fastest growing economy in 2015. Ethiopia has been the recipient of money lent to it by China and other foreign aid. Has that had an effect, in your view, on the people of Ethiopia?
Absolutely not. That is the major reason why younger people are frustrated, and the wealth is controlled by the Tigrayans, who constitute only 6% of the Ethiopian population, and the majority of the people do not see really this Ethiopian miracle. So although the country is growing, the wealth is not totally shared. Many people feel they are left out, and so the government receives a lot of money from the Western governments. China is investing. Many people do not see even their life changing. So massive corruption, alienation, frustration, also added to land grabs, leading to massive discontent in Ethiopia.
Professor Abbas Namo, good to speak with you, Professor, and thank you.
Thank you.
This is what Canada Member of Parliament has to say about Ethiopia in Canada Parliament.
The member for Barrie Springwater, Oromo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I want to raise awareness on the current situation in Ethiopia. Protests began in November of 2015 after the central government attempted to infringe on the population's land rights, and these protests are still ongoing. Recently, 1,600 civilians have been detained for peacefully demonstrating against the government. Human Rights Watch says at least 500 people have been killed in clashes with security forces to date. This month, the government has declared a state of emergency, severely restricting the access of diplomats and cutting off internet access. While there is a lot that is unknown at this point regarding what's happening in Ethiopia, Canada should be monitoring the situation with concern. As members of Parliament in Canada, we need to call on the Ethiopian government to ensure that freedom, democracy, and human rights are protected in the region. Our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Ethiopia.
This is what Anthony Byrne, MEP, Australian Labour Party, on ongoing operation of the Oromo people has to say in Australian Federal Parliament.
Call the member for Holt.
Deputy Speaker, I rise today on behalf of the Oromo community in Melbourne to again raise my concern about the actions of the state security forces in Ethiopia, with new and deeply concerning developments since the peaceful protests were conducted through Oromia, Ethiopia's largest region, in November 2015. Human Rights Watch has reported that during this protest period, over 400 people have been estimated to have been killed, tens of thousands arrested, and hundreds have been victims of enforced disappearances. These atrocities have been directly identified as being conducted by the Ethiopian government. As an example, on the 4th of September 2016, whilst we celebrated Father's Day here in this country, the Oromo Nation was mourning the death of over 60 Oromos in a prison that was set ablaze, a prison called the Kalinto prison. This comes after 9 months of peaceful protests, which have spread countrywide with the emergence of the Amara protests in the north and the intensification of the Konso protests in the south. Renowned leaders like Bakili Gerber have been issuing letters to the public to continue the peaceful protest and implement a program of civil disobedience. An example, a grand rally was conducted on the 6th of August 2016, where in one city of Asasa alone, over 20 peaceful protesters were killed. The imprisoned protest leaders have also issued a 5-day market boycott before the Ethiopian New Year. The timing of this economic boycott was critical, as it substantially reduced consumer and general spending by the public and government during this period. The boycotts on the Ethiopian Commercial Bank, telecommunications and transport services lasted until the 13th of September. About 60% of Ethiopia's GDP is from Oromia region, hence the consequences. Oromo farmers, artists and professional athletes are the backbone of Ethiopia, Mr Deputy Speaker, but have many years been marginalised and oppressed. A few weeks ago, that oppression was symbolised by the Oromo silver medalist Fayesa Lelesa, who was revered in Ethiopia by the Oromo people when he crossed the line after participating in the marathon with the Oromo protest sign that has been used for 2 years now. Lelesa dedicated his achievement to the Oromo protest, thereby risking his life, his career and his family at this Olympics. His action exposed the brutal governance of the TPLF. More importantly, it highlighted the plight of the 45 million Oromos in Ethiopia. These people have earned medals for Ethiopia since the time of one of the greatest runners of all time, Abibi Bikila, an Oromo himself. They've been unable to reap the benefits of their contribution to the Ethiopian society. Consequently, there have been very large numbers of Oromos fleeing their country. Early this year, hundreds of Oromo refugees perished in the Mediterranean Sea. What I'm calling upon, Mr Deputy Speaker, this is an ongoing period of persecution by the Ethiopian government. It needs to be condemned by the Australian government. They are an oppressed minority. It's our job to raise the oppression of minorities like the Oromo community.
Member's time has expired.